ser un cohete.
No, imposible, tan grande.
Big vertical streaks.
It's a country that's been at war for half a decade, so it's nothing new to see aircraft in the skies above Iraq. But the web's alive with questions over footage which seems to show something else.
I have no idea what the hell they are.
Earlier this year, a group of Marines saw something in their night vision they couldn't explain.
Is that the main one over there? Yeah.
They were used to seeing flares on the skyline, but this they thought was different.
Man, that's weird. Let me see your letter.
Unexplained deviations in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune point to a large outer solar system body of 4 to 8 Earth masses on a highly tilted orbit. Beyond we're sure of the 10th planet, they think there is nothing left but to name it.
The object does look a little bigger to me, and it's definitely captured for longer in the new video. The new video is much better. This is the new one. Look, it does look bigger. To me it does anyway. I think it is. Several different shots of it here. But you guys go check it out. You know, go compare the two videos. This isn't something new that's popped up in the sky in New Mare. I saw this a year ago. We all did, if you've been with me this time. But anyway, just wanted to do a comparison video on the two. Pretty interesting.
My attention was brought to these artifacts in an interview with Carlos Donner, and along with these artifacts there was some others which I was led to believe may be around 17,000 years old. Let's just talk about the first one. You see, like, there's two figures or people looking up, and on the plaque below them that they're standing on, you'll see quite obviously 3 dots that make up, if you just join them lines, a perfect triangle. Also, on the large jade cup, you'll see the exact same thing again, the 3 dots, and if you just join the line up, you'd make a triangle. Now, the other important fact about that cup is that it's magnetic only on the inside of the cup and not on the outside. And what you've got is 12 little cups. Yeah, if you was to fill up those cups with water and pour them into the larger cup, it would fill it completely. What I'm really surprised is that no one has actually gone looking for those 3 dots in the constellations, because they would have found them. They are situated very close to Orion, as is depicted on that square plaque. And if you look at the two figures, they're looking up towards the sky, so they're telling us something's important to be looking at up in the sky. I'm going to show you now exactly what it is they were looking at. This is what's called the winter triangle or the summer triangle. It's made up of the 3 stars: Sirius, Betelgeuse and Procyon. It is the only triangle perfectly formed anywhere in the night sky. But there's more to this triangle, as I will explain. The Egyptians tried to bring our attentions to it by building the pyramids in the same constellation as the Orion star constellation. They also, to rebut this fact, aimed the 2 air ducts coming out of the Great Pyramid at those stars exactly. You'll also note that the King's Chamber is slightly offset 90 degrees, whereas the Queen's Chamber, further lower down, is on the 90 degrees, directly central to the pyramid. There's a good reason for this. But just to recap, we have Sirius, Betelgeuse, and a triangle, or a pyramid. Look what happens when you lay them over a celestial map. All I've done is join the dots up in the winter triangle so it stands out more, and I've also put where the Queen's chamber is in the pyramid and the King's chamber, and you'll see they are lined smack bang up with the galactic equator. In fact, the line runs through the two circles on that galactic equator. There is no mistake, they wanted to bring our attention to this exact point in the celestial skies. This is a photocopy of a planisphere in the south. You can see the winter triangle and Orion. If you look at where the arrow is pointing, if you use the triangle as an arrow, you'll see it points exactly to the 1st of July, indicating perfectly the middle of the year, exactly. And as already shown on the celestial map, aligns perfectly with the galactic centre. In this photo you can see the planisphere. All as I've done is rotated it 180 degrees, and you'll find that it lines up with the 1st of January, or the beginning of a new year, exactly. And I've got only all these coordinates directly off the winter triangle that the Egyptians was trying to bring our attentions to, and also whoever built those little cups. It was something very important, but what I want to bring your attention to is that this now is aligned with Sagittarius, and also this is the point what the Mayans claim where the dark rift comes from. So maybe there is something here. There was both pyramids, and they're both telling us now the exact same spot in the celestial skies. As I've already explained, this cup was magnetic only on the inside, not on the outside, and it was clearly marked, as you can see, with that triangle on it, so bear that in mind. Magnetic only on the inside of the cup. I'm going to show you another artifact that was magnetic only at the centre of that triangle you're now seeing. You can see a little iron thing being attracted to the centre. Now you have them clearly showing you something, that whatever it is they're telling us is that inside this triangle it is clearly magnetic, and you can see it's almost in a spiral, and I believe that is our galaxy, and that the point that the Egyptians show us with the King and Queen's chamber is the points in the galactic equator where this happens. Here's another photograph, and you can see just that whatever they've painted this with is luminous in dark light. You know, and they're supposed to not have technology. These things are 17,000 years old. I believe they was trying to tell us something. And I believe that as we pass these 2 points in this triangle, we have a magnetic reversal. And I believe they was trying to warn us of this point in our future. And as we know from the Mayans, we're 27 months out from that time when this is all supposed to happen. Now, I've collaborated Egyptian evidence as well as Mayan to come to this summary. I suggest people start paying attention to this fact, because it's going to take place. And I believe our governments are going to the extremes to keep this quiet, because they want to keep it civilised as long as they can, but in doing that they're not giving everybody a chance of surviving this, what's coming. Our ancestors weren't as self-centred as this. They went to a lot of trouble to build these monuments so big that they would last the test of time, to give us a warning of what is to come again on these celestial cycles. The effects of the galactic alignment are already apparent. Earthquakes, eruptions of volcanoes, floods and tsunamis, and this is to say the least. There is worse yet to come, and it's going to get worse and worse. And your governments know this. Here's a photograph of the Sun taken by NASA in 2002, and here's one taken in 2009. You can clearly see the difference, I don't need to point it out. Here's a graph from NASA showing the magnetic fields, and you can see what date it's going to drop off at. Do some research. This is taking place, and they're not announcing it. You need to copy this video and post it, because I dare say it will be ripped off the YouTube, you know, once someone starts to make complaints about it. So write it and copy it and send it out, because I don't give a shit about the human continuity and continuity plans that the governments are planning. They don't give a shit about us people. You need to get the word out and do it fast.
NASA's Kepler mission has discovered the first Earth-sized planet orbiting in the habitable zone of a star outside our solar system. The newly discovered planet is called Kepler 186f and is about 10% larger than Earth.
Kepler 186f is the first validated Earth-sized planet in the habitable zone of its star. It's the outermost of 5 planets to orbit a star that is smaller and cooler than the Sun. This planet orbits its star every 130 days. And so this places it in the habitable zone, where it's in a region where it could have liquid water on its surface.
Kepler 186f resides in the Kepler 186 system, about 500 light-years from Earth in the constellation Cygnus.
This planet, Kepler 186f, orbits a star that's cooler and dimmer than the Sun. So while we may have found a planet that's the same size as Earth and receives a similar amount of energy to what Earth receives, it orbits a very different star. So perhaps instead of an Earth twin, we've discovered an Earth cousin.
On the surface of Kepler 186f, the brightness of its star at high noon is only as bright as our Sun appears to us about an hour before sunset. Scientists believe Kepler 186f is likely to be a rocky world, but are unable to confirm its mass and density.
This is one of the big milestones that we've been looking for in our attempts to find out if there are places just like home and if there's life out there. One of the big steps is to say, is there somewhere that looks, to all intents and purposes, like Earth? Well, we don't know just yet, but we know that there are places that at least look similar.
Managed by NASA's Ames Research Center, the Kepler mission collected this data using a space-based telescope to search one part of the galaxy for potentially habitable planets.
Today is February 22nd, 2014 on Saturday, 1:28 p.m. Pacific Time. And up next, okay folks, this is just for information. It is not to cause any fear or panic. It's just information. It's for you to decide. The 6th extinction. Earth is on the brink of another massive loss of animal species, but this time the calamity isn't an asteroid or ice age. And this is by Brad Plumer and is dated February 16, 2014. There have been 5 mass extinction events in Earth's history. In the worst, 250 million years ago, 96% of marine species and 70% of land species died off. It took millions of years to recover. Nowadays, many scientists are predicting that we're on pace for a 6th mass extinction. The world's species are already vanishing at an unnaturally rapid rate, and humans are altering the Earth's landscape in far-reaching ways. We've hunted animals such as the great auk to extinction. We've cleared away broad swaths of rainforest. We've transported species from their natural habitats to new continents. We've pumped billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and oceans, transforming the climate. Those changes are pushing more species to the brink. A 2007 report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change suggested that 20 to 30% of plant and animal species faced an increased risk of extinction this century if the planet keeps warming, though scientists are still debating these exact numbers, with some going far higher. So what happens if the extinction rate speeds up? That's one of the questions that Elizabeth Kolbert, the New Yorker science writer, explores in her excellent new book, The Sixth Extinction, an in-depth look at the science of extinction and the ways we're altering life on the planet. We spoke by phone this week about the topic. Brad Plumer. Let's start by walking through the history of science. In the 18th century, no one even knew that there were any extinct species. How did we get from there to realizing there have been 5 of these mass extinction events in Earth's history? Elizabeth Kolbert. There is an interesting history there. Up until the early 1800s, the concept of extinction didn't really exist. Even early in the 19th century, you had Thomas Jefferson hoping that when he sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to the Northwest, they would find mastodons roaming around. Mastodon bones have been unearthed. There was a very famous one unearthed in New York and displayed in Philadelphia, and people thought they must still exist somewhere. But right around that time, a French naturalist named Georges Cuvier came to the realization that if these animals were out there, we would have seen them by now. And that made lots of sense about a lot of things. There were these bones that were very, very hard to explain. And more, as Europeans colonized the New World, they were getting bones shipped to them. It made sense of these weird nautical creatures that have been found. So extinction actually predated the concept of evolution about a half a century. People knew that things went extinct, even though they didn't really understand how species came into being. But there was still some debate. Cuvier thought that when extinctions happened, it must be because the Earth changed quickly and catastrophically. Why else would an animal that was perfectly suited to life on this planet go extinct? His theory became known as catastrophism, and Charles Lyell and Charles Darwin came along and said, "That's ridiculous. The Earth changes slowly. We've never seen a catastrophe. That's because they don't exist." That paradigm persisted until the 1980s and 1990s. That was when Walter Alvarez and his father Luis came up with the theory that an asteroid impact had done in the dinosaurs. And that idea was actually resisted for some of the same reasons. The dominant view was that the Earth does not change quickly, but then it was proven. And so now the prevailing view of change on planet Earth, as one paleontologist put it, is that the history of life consists of long periods of boredom, interrupted occasionally by panic. Let's read that again. Consists of long periods of boredom, interrupted occasionally by panic. It usually changes slowly, but sometimes it changes fast, and when it does, it's very hard for organisms to keep up. BP. Nowadays, scientists are aware of 5 mass extinction events in the past, starting with the end Ordovician extinction 450 million years ago, and up to the end Cretaceous extinction that killed off the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Is there a lot we still don't know about what caused these events? EK says yes, absolutely. Although it depends. I think with the dinosaurs, the asteroid theory is quite widely accepted at this point. There was a big paper in Science on this subject last year, although there were still a couple of holdouts. The worst mass extinction of all time came about 250 million years ago, the Permian-Triassic extinction event. There's a pretty good consensus that this was caused by a huge volcanic event that went on for a long time and released a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That is pretty ominous considering that we are releasing a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere and people increasingly are drawing parallels between the two events. The very first extinction event seems to have been caused by some kind of sudden cold snap, but no one's exactly sure how that happened. But then, with the other two, the causes of those are pretty murky, and people have tried to come up with a unified theory for these extinctions, but that hasn't worked at all. The causes seem to be pretty disparate. And these are zebra mussels, by the way, in that photograph. BP. At some point, scientists realized that modern-day extinction rates seem to be elevated, that species are now going extinct faster than the normal background rate. How did they realize this? EK. I think a point that's important to make is that normally you shouldn't be able to see anything go extinct in the course of a human lifetime. The normal background rate of extinction is very slow, and speciation and extinction should be more or less equal out. But that's clearly not what is happening right now. Any naturalist out in the field has watched something go extinct or come perilously close. Even children can name things that have gone extinct. Okay, folks.
It's about 10:30 a.m. near Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm going to show you something that's kind of trippy. I'm going to take this card right here. It's a normal piece of paper, a couple inches long, about an inch wide. It's a valet slip from downtown. I'm just going to use this. I'm going to use it to block the screen, kind of like just partially, so that you can see something behind the sun, and that I can prove that it's not lens glare. And that's what all these people are saying, is that you're seeing lens glare and you're seeing things that aren't there. So give me just a second. Okay. So, if you didn't know, that's the sun. And at the bottom of the screen you'll see lens glare. Notice it moves very easily. I mean, it has a very wide range depending on how you angle your screen. Alright, now if I take this valet slip and I come up just enough on the camera, you can see that little circle that's about just to the top right of the sun. Now you can say that this is lens glare. Now if I move it this way, it doesn't move. It stays in the same spot. If I come back, oops, sorry, it's windy. If I come back and move this way, it stays above the sun, right there. Now if that's lens glare, then how come it's not moving like this one? Like that. That one moves. See it? That's lens glare. I know it looks the same. However, that cannot be lens glare if you can see it when the sun is not hitting my screen. And if I'm turning it, then how can it be lens glare? It stays in the same spot. This isn't a trick card. There's nothing on it. There's no tricks. It's just a card. Kind of makes you wonder.
You can't hide it anymore, people. Even with the chemtrailing, there it is. Directly behind the sun to the left. They've been chemtrailing to hide this thing. It's got to come out. It's going to come out taking it to the newspapers.
Alright, hey, what's up again? So this is a zoomed in video of whatever this is. Here's the sun there, and there's my weird, and here's this thing right in our sky, whatever this is. It's something red over it. I don't know what that is. That's not my film glare. That's not my film glare. Here's our sun. Here's our second sun. Here's our sun. Here's our second sun. No, you know, here's what I was thinking. I could talk. Could this possibly be a sun from a different dimension? You know how, you know, they're saying we're moving into the sixth dimension or whatnot, or the fifth, the fourth, fifth, whatever, whichever one. I don't really follow it, but I'm just trying to, you know, verify, make a few people happy. But could this be another sun from a different dimension? Am I peering in to a different dimension right now by looking at this sun, or am I actually seeing this? Yeah, like I said, I'm not scared. It's not scaring me. It's just really tripping. I'm zoned in with my camera right now. I'm laying on my grass. I pan everywhere just to kind of show you guys that this isn't trickery or anything. And then I show you guys the red speck right there. That's my film glare. Okay? That's the glare from the camera or whatever. This is actually something in our solar system. Okay, this is no right now as I speak. You understand what I'm saying? This is real because I caught it. You know, I haven't seen any video like the one I'm recording today. Hold on, let me show you guys something. Sir, check this out. If I could just have a second of your time. If I could just have a second of your time. Oh no? Okay, no problem. Sorry. Well, he didn't want. That's apartment 2. Apartment 5. Upstairs. Well, he didn't want to see anything. He's too stuck in the matrix, stuck in the system. You know, I was just going to simply ask him to look at this thing here. If he would have seen it, it probably would have freaked him out. But literally, there are 2 suns in the sky right now. There are 2 suns in the sky, and then something over this second sun. That's what I'm calling it. I'm calling it a second sun.
There, that got it. Now you can look, see, it's glowing, people. Now look, I have seen sunlight, you know, that beautiful effect when it's behind big cumulus clouds and sunlight is just spilling out. This is not that. This is like, actually, it looks like a second sun, and it's got almost like, I guess it's a Kimbo with all the chemtrails. I don't know. I don't know. All I'm telling you is this is not normal. I'm tripping over this. Because you could actually see it glowing through the trees just like you see the sun do. See, you don't see that with the other. Then you've got all this mess up above us. What in the world? Wow. 2 suns. And look how far apart it is. I wish there was some way to really get the idea here. Okay, there's the sun behind that tree. Okay. Now swing over here a little bit, and it's over here. Do you see the distance apart? Well, I guess I've lived long enough to see some mighty weird things in my life. That takes the cake for me. Come on. I'm glad at least I had my camera to grab that. And they're making more back here.
fix. Several times per million years, Earth's magnetic pole does a full flip. At first, it becomes disorganized, with new poles popping up in odd places like the equator, bringing the green and red northern lights to the skies of Florida. The last shift was over 700,000 years ago, leaving some to say we're due.
Some people have speculated that there's a shift beginning,
which may explain this recent fluctuation. But because our lifetimes are a blink of an eye in the geological timescale, it's too soon to tell.
Now on to some downright frightening news about climate change in tonight's Green Report. NASA scientists were left stunned after analyzing data showing that Greenland's ice sheet is melting at an unprecedented rate. 3 independent satellites confirmed that over 4 days, the amount of ice melting in Greenland jumped from 40 to 97%, showed by this chart. The image on the left is from July 8th, the image on the right from July 12th. As one NASA scientist wrote in a press release, this was so extraordinary that at first I questioned the result. Was this real, or was it due to a data error? Unfortunately, it's very much real. And in 30 years of observations, never has this much ice melted away from Greenland so fast. Of course, oil industry funded scientists will tell you, everything's just fine, it's just a really hot summer. Meanwhile, they're the ones most likely looking for mountaintop real estate away from the soon-to-be rising oceans.
And I want to make a video response to it. And this is information on Kyle Kaplan, the Texas EDU guy, Department of Astronomy. Looking at his video right here, and I've stopped it where he's giving the right ascension and the declination values right here, and I'm using stellarium to look to where he says this object is, which I've already turned away from his location. It's I'm not going to be able to find it, but anyway, it's around here on the north end, and this is in his neighborhood, and I believe where he says the object is very near this location. You see, we have 4 hours. We have on the ascension, we have about 60 degrees over here. This is far, far above the plane and way too high. The object that we're actually going to be looking for is going to be very much near the plane. If you think about it, a peripheral dwarf, which is a dwarf star that's created with our solar system, is going to be very near the plane. It's going to have, relative to the sun, very near a 0-0 declination, and that's going to change with the Earth as it's tilting back and forth at 23.5 degrees. Where I place our object is actually going to be about right here in the Libra constellation, 15 hours and about a -16 declination right now. And the problem with this explanation, that this is really where Nibiru is, well, something this high above the plane is never going to create a seismic pattern. So when you get into Bible prophecy, for example, and the birth pangs that are in the earthquakes, the signs that Jesus Christ gives, the earthquakes, the volcanism, the tsunamis, and things like that, then yes, those are symptoms of a binary twin to our sun that is interacting with the inner solar system, or a peripheral dwarf. And my view early on in the investigation a couple of years ago was that we were dealing with a peripheral dwarf. Now I've come to realize, looking at the historical precedent, that we're dealing with a binary twin to our sun, and this cannot possibly be anywhere in the neighborhood of what we're talking about. And the reasons are, let me see what I could pull up for you really fast to show you. That would be newsletter number 44 from 2013. Let me see if I can pull that up for you real fast, which I think I can. Okay, this is from number 44. Here's a little note for Sheldon. Instead of having this auto, do your own adjustment. It makes everything clear up for you. This is my Black Star event timeline showing events for 2013, and which is a condensed version of what has been going on. But whenever you look at the seismic pattern, then in 2010, this object was in Leo. And when Japan happened, then this object was between Leo and Virgo. And you see how that now we're in Virgo. We were in Virgo in 2012, and this object is, notice how these pie shapes are getting larger and larger, right? Well, the next predicted event is for May the 17th, 2014. That's whenever I expect a crossing event to take place. But the seismic pattern, this is the scientific data that says that there's something out there. We've got backside alignment events also, and lots of other indicators. This is just the seismic pattern that I'm showing you. But for example, where I'm holding my cursor right here, this is in 2012. This object, we were coming up on this Guerrero event. This is when the magnetosphere flipped around, March 12th and 13th, 2012. That says that the object was on the entering side of the Virgo constellation. So that's just another bit of evidence that tells us where this thing was. And this thing must be very near the equator of the sun in order to create a seismic pattern. So the scientific evidence is going to disprove what this fellow's saying. Although I believe he's looking at something, actually, the Skyview team, the Kuiper Belt object guys, I think they might be looking at the same thing. Another problem that I have is this fellow's apparently not using infrared or anything else. He's showing all these different, these objects out in space. That could be anything. And Don, the astronomer that I'm working with, he has his own observatory. He's been looking at the area of space where this guy's at, which the observation window is not open now. We are just now making the 90-degree angle to be able to open up the observation window into where I'm trying to look in the Libra constellation. So nobody can go out there with a telescope and look at it right now, not a ground-based telescope. That opportunity is opening up for us soon, but it's just not there yet. But whenever it is, we're going to be looking at it with infrared equipment, and we're not going to be able to see it. We haven't been able to see it on previous orbit cycles. The use of astronomers and telescopes, it depends so much on the technology. We're dealing with an anomalous object that you can't see, which is the reason I'm having to track it through the Earth changes, magnetic pole migration, through the mass animal deaths, when they're happening, when's the seismic low in the indicator quakes. That's going to be 90-degree angle from, let me get back over here to this newsletter. You see, when you draw a 90-degree line from these are alignments. This is what's happening on the alignment. Notice the colors. So if I have an alignment in green on the front side, that bends around because we have to add days because this object is moving faster and faster left in the orbit diagram from our perspective. Okay, but when I draw 90-degree lines out, I'm finding outside orbit position. In other words, where Earth comes into alignment on the backside, and then a little over 90 days later, we're going to outside orbit position representing the seismic low. So that is clearly identifiable, very predictable. We're coming to the seismic low right now around February the 1st. Okay, so now the uptick period begins and we start this whole cycle again, and rather than Iran on 4/9 last year, we're going to be adding more than a month. Where back here, whenever in 2010, I was only having to add 11 days to find my next event. This Japan event I predicted for 3/15 happened on 3/11. I was a little bit off, but my estimates are getting closer and closer now. I'm understanding more and more about what's happening here. And this predicted date, I do not know if the black star is here. I don't know that it's going to cross Earth orbit path, but that's what the indicators are saying. And I'm just being true and honest to the research, looking at the data and making projections based on that. Hopefully it's wrong. Hopefully there's a super wave, or the video I made yesterday about the super wave, right? It's possible that I am looking at the symptoms of the super wave. It's possible. Their convergence date is May of 2014, just like mine. Okay, which makes me suspicious, but it's possible, because I'm tracking symptoms and not actually looking at an object, it's possible that it is a super wave that I'm looking at, and but the convergence date is May of 2014 based on the science. Okay.
Studying this for some time, I noticed over on the right-hand corner of this dark area, a little red orbital coming out in a bit of a squirrely figure of eight sort of pattern. About then, I started to look up at 12 o'clock, and I saw two more orbitals that popped out. They were white. Then I started looking all around this area, and then over on the left, there were two that were blue that sort of popped in and popped out and popped in and popped out. Also, just underneath here, at about 6 o'clock, were two more white objects or orbitals that were popping out. Now, what's interesting about this, the French, I can't think of the name of their team, but on March 3rd and March 5th, they took a video of this moving across the sky, and it showed all the orbitals. After that, they only showed pictures of the single solitary comet. They didn't show any more time-lapse films. All they did was point to the one area was a comet, and what you really wanted to see was over to the right of that. They didn't take any more pictures of that. I'm sure they saw it. They just didn't take any more pictures. In any event, it scared me so bad that night on the 29th, I immediately called I immediately spoke with Carol and one of the other members of our group. And I actually asked him not to mention it or anything at that point. I was actually frightened. So the next night, which was the 30th, on a Sunday, I thought, well, I don't believe what I saw. It's not real. I'm going to just forget it. I'll just take a look again. And it was still motionless, and unfortunately, it was still there. The orbitals were still there. The popping out was going on. And this, I became even more frightened. And also I was still a bit in denial until finally on the third night I said, I'll forget what I saw the last two nights and I'll look again this time on the third night. And on the third night, exact same thing. It was still motionless. The orbital cloud, I don't mean the orbital cloud, but the gravity well was still bending light over at Regulus and then moving where you could see Regulus. The red orbital was still coming out doing a real squirrely orbit. The two on top were there, the two on the left, and the two on the bottom. And, at that point, I couldn't convince myself of that I didn't see what I saw. I'd seen it 3 nights in a row. It didn't go away, and the consequences of that have caused me to make urgent changes in my life.
Cool.